Hi, this is my final presentation for CI 5361, and I have chosen to do my final presentation as a conference breakout session for the TIES Education Technology Conference. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is a flipped classroom. So as I mentioned before, this conference breakout session will be for the TIES Education Technology Conference. And it is pretty much a conference where educators come together and share how they are integrating technology in their classrooms and how educators can come together and collaborate and learn from one another. So first I'm going to start my breakout session explaining about my experience with teaching. So I have 8 years of teaching, and 2 years of my teaching started in North Minneapolis in a classroom that had no technology at all. We were pretty much a startup charter school that had direct instruction with textbooks and paper and pencil, and that's pretty much all we had. And that was only 8 years ago. And then I taught for 1 year in White Bear Lake School District, where each classroom only had 5 iPads that students were able to rotate through each day. And then I also taught for 5 years in St. Paul Public Schools, where we had 1-to-1 iPad ratio, a smartboard, and a document camera. So it was a very technology-rich classroom that allowed me to really take in technology and learn more about it and do more research about how to integrate technology into the classroom, especially when my students that I was teaching came from such a big experience, wide range experience with technology. So with my 8 years of teaching, I taught kindergarten, first and second grade, so in the primary years of elementary. So my contact information, you can email me through grace.yang@spps.org. So what is a flipped classroom? According to Michael B. Horn and Heather Staker, a flipped classroom is a course or subject in which students participate in online learning off-site in place of traditional homework and then attend the brick-and-mortar school for face-to-face, teacher-guided practice, or projects. The primary delivery of content and instruction is online, which differentiates a flipped classroom from students who are merely doing homework practice online at night. So it is a traditional classroom flipped 180 degrees, so the instruction is at home and the practice is at school, whereas in now, the instruction is at school and the practice is at home through homework. So on this figure, which I retrieved from the book Blended, it shows that at school there's offline learning and the teacher is guiding students through practice and projects, and then at home students are doing the online learning and content and then taken to school where they can practice and do projects. So I have 3 flipped classroom videos that I would like for us to view today. The first flipped classroom video is of a teacher who implemented flipped classroom. And so while we're watching this short video, I want you to think about what you notice and think about why he chose to flip his classroom. And then we'll discuss those questions after we watch this short video. So let's take a look.
I'm Aaron Sams, and I teach science here at Woodland Park High School. My ultimate goal, I guess, as a teacher is to help students become learners who can learn for themselves and by themselves. One of the problems that I was guilty of even prior to flipping my classroom around was the classroom was centered around me. I told them exactly what to learn, how to learn it, what assignments to do to learn it, and when to learn it, and how to prove to me that they learned it. I don't do that anymore. We changed the place in which content is delivered. Instead of standing in front of a class and delivering, here's how you do this type of problem, here's how this works, I deliver that direct instruction now asynchronously at home through these videos that we make with Camtasia Studio. Kids come to class, they don't show up to learn new stuff, they show up to apply the things that they learn at home and to ask me questions about the things they learned at home. So now they can have my lesson, if you will, what I would normally have stood up and lectured to them in class with some added features. They get that at home. Then what they were expected to do for homework is now what they do in my class. Life is different for me because I no longer am the guy who stands up in the front of the classroom and just yaks at his students for an hour or however long the class is. Now I walk around the class and I help kids. I'm a tutor, I'm a guide, I'm the putter-outer of fires, whatever it happens to be. In my crazy chemistry class, I walk around and do that. I don't stand up front and teach under the kind of the traditional model. I'm Aaron Sams.
All right, so if we continue on here, we are actually, we'll go back here. Okay, so what did you notice? So I know one thing I noticed is that previously he was just standing in front of the classroom, traditional classroom setting where the classroom is revolved around the teacher, where the teacher teaches the lesson, guides students in the activities and answers questions and is constantly the one doing the majority of the work. Whereas once he chose to flip his classroom, all of a sudden the classroom was centered around the students, and students were able to learn at home and come back to school and really just dive into what they learned. And so in this conference breakout session, I would allow the attendees to be able to talk amongst one another and share out their thoughts and ideas for what they noticed about this video. So if you take a look at the next video, it is a video of a middle school and where the teachers implemented a flipped classroom to get their students engaged in their learning. It wasn't completely flipped. It was something they wanted to try to see if students would be engaged, because you'll see and notice that students were coming into the classroom, falling asleep, not really paying attention to the lecture. And when the students decided to flip the classroom for a couple of days, it totally changed the mindsets of the students. So I just want you to watch this video, and it's actually in Korean, so you'll have to read the subtitles to see how the teachers implemented a flipped classroom for a couple of days. So we'll scroll down. This is also retrieved from the blended book with Michael B. Horn and Heather Staker. So we'll just wait for these videos to load really quick, and then we'll go ahead and watch this video here.
뒤 수업 동영상을 보고 아이들이 돌아옵니다. 상황이 어떤 상황이지? 뭔가 분위기가 다른데요? 자, 기다리고 돌아오면 그래서 여자가 남자를 교실이 이상해졌습니다. 남자가 떠나니까 그걸 어떻게 수준이? 연예인 누군지 알겠어? 끝없이 떠드는 아이들을 가만히 들여다보면 모두 선생님이 나눠준 과제를 함께 푸느라 정신없습니다.
네, 쌤, 네.
여기세요.
네.
수영과요.
네.
반복되는 거잖아요.
그렇죠. 네.
여기
그렇지. 훈련구가 긴 것도 있고, 짧은 것도 있고.
맞아.
동동 아웃.
평소 수업 시간에 그렇게도 조용하던 아이들이
자,
끝없이 선생님을 불러댑니다.
몰라. 알겠지? 자,
마치 어미를 기다리며 삐약거리는 아기 새떼 같습니다. 일찍이 볼 수 없었던 질문 대공세입니다. 그것도 점심시간 직후 가장 졸음이 쏟아진다는 5교시에 말이죠.
원래 수업 시간에 잠 많이 안 잤어요?
잤어요. 약간 네 많이 잤었어요. 피곤하고 또
오늘 있으니까.
네.
오늘 어땠어요?
오늘은 뭐 잠 한 번도 안 졸고 오늘 재밌었어요. 많이.
국어 수업에 그것도 고전을 가르치는데 이게 이렇게 재밌을 수도 있어요?
너무 재밌는 이거 뭐 말로써 표현할 수가 없을 정도로 많이 재밌었어요.
정말?
네.
영어 수업 시간에도 아이들의 말문이 터졌습니다.
조용하다는 말은 사람들이 밖에 나가겠나, 안 나가겠나. 마을이 조용하다는 말은 집에 있지 밖에 나가나, 안 나가나.
안 나가죠.
안 나가면은 나가는 사람들이 있겠나, 없겠나.
그러면 삐었네요.
그렇지. 다시 사과가 몇 개 있다. 긍정적으로 해석했다. There are a few. 그렇지. apple. 진짜 사과가.
이전 수업보다 독특했어요.
독특했어요.
별 4개 반?
4개 반? 굉장히 높은 편이네. 꽤 괜찮았던 거예요, 이렇게 바꾼 게?
만족해.
바로 지난주만 해도 수업 시간 내내 무너져 있던 똑같은 아이들입니다. 수업 내용도 바뀐 게 없었습니다. 과연 이 변화는 지속될 수 있을까요? 오후 1시. 점심을 먹고 아이들이 학교에서 가질 수 있는 귀한 휴식 시간입니다. 그런데 도서실에 3, 4, 5 모인 아이들이 강의를 듣고 있습니다.
안 듣고 왔어요? 네. 근데 여튼 수업 전에 이렇게 열심히 있을 때 전에 해본 적 있어요?
어저께 안 들어서 그때만 적어놔서 오늘 그냥 듣고 적으려고.
평소에 이렇게 미리 수업 전에 예습한 적 있어요? 이전에는 이렇게 공부한 적 없어? 다른 친구들도 마찬가지지?
다 그럴 거예요.
이상한 일이 벌어진 거네? 신기하네. 원래 보통 이렇게 쉬는 시간에 뭐해요?
그냥 놀아요. 놀아요.
재밌는 변화인데?
Alright, so after viewing that video, we'll come back here and talk about the questions. So, what difference did you see in the way students were engaged? Well, obviously, it first started off showing right away that it was the first day that the teachers implemented a flipped classroom. And it was 10 minutes after students just got done watching the lesson video. And right away, you see students diving into the work. They're engaged. They're engaged in conversations with one another, trying to figure out what the poem was asking of them, asking questions, and just seeing that they were really interested in what the learning content was. So how would you implement this in your own setting? What could you do in ways where students can watch the lesson beforehand and come to your classroom and then dive into the work? I think there are plenty of things and ideas and examples that you can implement into your own classroom. And so in the breakout session, obviously, just like the previous video, they would talk amongst their groups about how they would implement this in their own setting. And so the last video, it just kind of hits home a little bit where we will watch a video of the Stillwater Area Public Schools implementing a flipped classroom. And you'll hear from students and teachers sharing their experience of a flipped classroom and hearing from a parent, not from directly from a parent, but from a teacher who spoke with a parent about what their thoughts and views were on a flipped classroom. So, as you're watching, just think about what students and teachers and parents have to say about a flipped classroom.
Teachers last year in our district who really engaged with the flipped classroom project said two things. Number one, they said, this has been the most difficult year I've had as a professional. But they also said something very powerful.
So we're having some technical difficulties.
Teachers last year in our district who really engaged with the flipped classroom project said two things. Number one, they said, this has been the most difficult year I've had as a professional. But they also said something very powerful. They said, this has been the best year I've ever had. I'm not going back to any other way of doing business.
With an ever-changing world and a global society, a four-walled classroom is not the norm anymore. The learners need to be able to be learning 24/7.
One parent was very concerned about how it would deal with their child. It was kind of an average student. So they came to me with these concerns. I said, let's just try it out and see how it goes. And I kept in contact with those parents. And a couple weeks into it, they just said their daughter was thriving. They loved that they were able to sit there and watch the lesson and talk through the lesson with their child. And they thought that she was getting a deeper understanding of it.
When you do flip math at home, it's easier to go back to school and know the lesson ahead of time. I like the idea of a video because it will help you. And if you don't get a question on the quiz, then you can go back to the video and watch it again.
And then the other powerful thing is, if they still have a question, they can go back to their teacher in their classroom and say, you know what, I didn't get this in the video. Can you explain it to me?
And when I have that buy-in from them, when they kind of feel like they're in charge of where they're going, or at least they have some say in where they're going, I can give them a goal. We can talk about where, the direction that I need them to go, but they get to kind of map that course themselves. I think they get excited about learning.
I'm surprised at how everybody has been so engaged with this, from the teachers to the students to the parents, and I've been amazed at the learning that's taking place and the success that students feel.
We're here to teach and to help our children, and I think flipping definitely meets the needs of all your students. It's in its infancy, but seeing the positives of how this meets their kids' needs, and yes, it might add a little bit more work, but it's a powerful program. And I think that it will be valuable for years to come.
So now, going back to the questions, we heard from students talking about their experience and how they enjoyed going home, watching the videos, and if they didn't understand or quite grasp an idea or a concept in the lesson, they were able to go back and rewatch the video to try to fully understand what they were trying to learn. So that allowed students to be able to learn at their pace and be able to fully understand something before they went to school the next day, or if they had questions about the lesson, that they were able to bring it to their teacher and ask questions that help them understand what the content was. And how can parents be involved in the flipped classroom experience? Well, I think with students being able to learn the lessons at home, parents then know too what the students are learning and how they can better support their child at home with these lessons. And then they have a better idea of what they're doing at school as well. So now we'll talk about learning how to create a flipped classroom. So after learning about what a flipped classroom is and what it entails, there are a few steps to be able to create a flipped classroom. So first, you need to create the content or find a resource. So, for example, you can do a do-it-yourself video, DIY video, doing a screencast. So if your lesson is about measurement, you can record yourself teaching the lesson of, for example, how to read a ruler and how to measure correctly, and then creating your video there. Or you can find other resources. There are plenty of videos out there that support lessons that there are actually, I'll show in the next couple of slides a few different resources you can use to find videos, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. The second thing you do is you embed a formative assessment. So after the students watch the video and the lesson, tie in a formative assessment to see if students are understanding what your lesson or learning target is. And so I'll also share how you can embed a formative assessment. And thirdly, share with students. So share the video, share the formative assessment with students, whether it's through Google Classroom, which is also a wonderful tool for students to be able to submit their assessments, and you can easily grade those assessments on Google Classroom. Seesaw is another tool you're able to use where you can post up videos and assessments, or if it's through ClassDojo, whatever medium you choose, share it with your students. And then lastly, view and analyze the formative assessment. So look at the formative assessments and see how students are how students are doing, if they're understanding your lessons, and how they are learning. And so next we'll talk about the pros and cons of a flipped classroom. So some pros, as mentioned earlier, students are able to learn at their own pace. So for students that understand the concept well, maybe they only have to watch the lesson one time through and then take the formative assessment. Maybe students have to watch the video twice to fully understand, or they have to go back and rewatch and relearn whatever task is at hand. So it allows for students to learn at their own pace. Another pro of a flipped classroom is communication with parents. Many parents nowadays want to know what students are learning at school, and what better way for them to learn and know is to be able to watch these lessons together with their child and to be able to help their child fully comprehend what is the learning task at hand. And then lastly, the student interaction. And so when students come back to school and use what they have learned through the video lesson, they're able to interact with their peers, to be able to work together, to be involved with the activities or the activities or things that are at hand at school. So they're able to communicate with each other and collaborate and work together as a team. So those are the pros of a flipped classroom. Just a few. The cons, sometimes you may run into technology issues. Sometimes videos are not working. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the Wi-Fi isn't working. And sometimes students aren't able to get internet access at home. So providing those means for those families where they can have access so that students are able to learn and access those videos at home. There may be a lack of resources since a flipped classroom is still in its infancy stage, so you're required to create more videos yourself. And students may not come prepared all the time. They may not be able to watch the video at home. And so how would you be able to meet those students' needs as well? Here are the resources that I had talked about before. If you're looking to create your own video, there are things such as Screencast-O-Matic. If you look here, you can sign up, and for free, you're able to download this and record videos up to 15 minutes for free. There's also something called TechSmith, which is another tool that you're able to use. You do have to download the app that, or the tool that is available for you to use. And then there's also something called Flipgrid, where students are able to, where you're able to record a video and students are able to reply back with a video, and it's really engaging for those students. Otherwise, you can retrieve videos from different places like Khan Academy, YouTube, TED Talks, or even Google now has video lessons that are available to teachers to use for students to watch and learn. And so there are plenty of content out there available that are already pre-made that can save you a lot of time. And so, as I was saying, video sharing through Google Classroom, through Seesaw, and through ClassDojo. So these are just some of the resources available to help you get started with flipping your classroom. So if you want more information, I was new to Twitter this year through this course, and I found that Twitter is also a really great resource if you are looking to get ideas from other educators. And from my research and I guess investigating more about a flipped classroom, I simply put in the hashtag flipped classroom, and several other educators posted their ideas of how they flipped their classroom, suggestions about how to create a flipped classroom, pros and cons of a flipped classroom. And so the ideas and content are kind of endless through Twitter. So look there for more information if you are wanting some ideas. And so, are ready to flip your classroom? These are just some of the simple steps to help you flip your classroom. And once again, if you have any questions or would like some ideas or things, feel free to contact me. I have not entirely flipped my classroom, but I did flip my math time with my students. So I have my students watching the math lesson, some at home through ClassDojo, because that's what I use for my classroom. I post a video up on ClassDojo, and parents or students are able to view it at home. And then when they come to school, we just kind of review what they watched. And so that's where students share what they watched, and they are in turn kind of teaching the other students about their perspective of what the learning task was at hand. And then at school, we're able to just dive in right away. And so the recent lesson I did was with measurement, and I had students measure objects using a ruler, measuring with inches and centimeters. And so I taught the lesson through a video that I screencasted, and then students watched it at home, came back to school, and right away they wanted to take a ruler and just measure everything in the classroom by inches and centimeters. It was like they were just so excited to learn. They took ownership of their learning. They took ownership of the work that they did, and they took ownership in teaching other students who weren't able to watch the videos. And so that was just my personal experience with a flipped classroom, and looking forward to flipping entire classroom with all the content that I am able to teach. So this is the end of my final project, and I really enjoyed this breakout session and learning how to flip my classroom, and hopefully you are able to flip your classroom as well. So that's what I have for this final project.